You're gambling with World War III.
You don't have the cards right now.
You're not winning. You're not winning this.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting?
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
Could you take on Russia by yourselves?
Well, you have full backing across the United Kingdom, and we stand with you, with Ukraine, for as long as it may take.
Europe is in a state of emergency, searching for peace, military and general aid to Ukraine, general security actions against Russia, and comprehensive defense plans. The whole world is now focused on the decisions coming from the European Union. The failure of the Trump-Zelensky meeting in Washington has deepened the uncertainty in the Ukraine war, exacerbating global tensions and concerns in Europe. Europe must now define a common strategy to ensure its own security and maintain its support for Ukraine. At such a sensitive time, Europe's major powers are meeting in London for an emergency summit. The main agenda of the United Kingdom-led summit is the continuation of military support to Ukraine and a final end to the war. Just one day before this summit, United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met urgently. As a result of the Starmer-Zelensky meeting, the United Kingdom announced that it would provide Ukraine with $2.8 billion in support. We're going to sign the UK-Ukrainian Extraordinary Revenue Acceleration Loan Agreement. Of course, this is in addition to the £3 billion a year ongoing support from the United Kingdom to Ukraine. We already know that the United Kingdom has decided to send troops and Typhoon jets to Ukraine. With these moves, the United Kingdom is almost challenging Moscow. What impact will these global developments have on European security and balances? As the cards are being redistributed on the world stage, how will London's support for Ukraine change the balance? For answers to our questions and more, our video begins. But first of all, please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and give us a like to stay up to date with our content. Let us get started. The United Kingdom has reached an agreement with Kyiv to provide Ukraine with a $2.84 billion loan backed by frozen Russian assets. The loan, under the Group of Seven's Extraordinary Revenue Acceleration Lending Initiative, was signed during Zelensky's visit to London to meet with Keir Starmer. Starmer told reporters at a press conference with Zelensky that the Group of Seven stands by Ukraine. You have full backing across the United Kingdom, and we stand with you, with Ukraine, for as long as it may take. United Kingdom Finance Minister Rachel Reeves and Ukrainian Finance Minister Sergei Marchenko will sign the UK-Ukraine bilateral agreement. Sergei Marchenko said that the United Kingdom continues to defend Ukraine. Today's agreement, which contributes to strengthening Ukraine's defense capabilities, confirms this. The loan will be used to purchase defense equipment that suits Ukraine's needs, the finance ministry said. The £2.26 billion loan will strengthen Ukraine's military capability and will be repaid using profits from sanctioned Russian sovereign assets. The loan demonstrates the United Kingdom's commitment to Ukraine's defense. A strong Ukraine is vital to United Kingdom national security. The entire loan will be used for military purchases to strengthen Ukraine's defenses, with the first tranche expected to be disbursed to Ukraine next week. Russia's obligation under international law to pay for the damage it has done to Ukraine is clear, and this Group of Seven agreement, backed by profits from Russian state assets subject to sanctions, is an important step toward ensuring that this happens. The funding will be provided in 3 equal annual payments of £752 million. The announcement of the loan agreement is in addition to the United Kingdom's commitment to provide military assistance to Ukraine, a commitment of £3 billion per year. The loan follows the Prime Minister's government's commitment to increase United Kingdom defence spending to 2.5% of gross domestic product by 2027 and, if economic and fiscal conditions permit, to increase defence spending to 3% of gross domestic product in the next Parliament. In addition to this financial support, the Starmer administration has opened the door to military and arms support. In January, Zelensky and Starmer signed a 100-year partnership agreement during their meeting in Kyiv on January 16. The comprehensive agreement covers cooperation in the military, energy, scientific, cultural, economic, and other sectors. There has also been talk for months about sending British Typhoon fighter jets to Ukraine and sending more than 10,000 peacekeepers to Ukraine. United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that he is ready and willing to deploy British troops to Ukraine to enforce any peace agreement. Starmer said that any role in helping to guarantee the security of Ukraine helps to guarantee the security of our continent and this country. This was the first time Mr. Starmer has openly said he is willing to send British troops to Ukraine. When French President Emmanuel Macron first raised the possibility of sending Western peacekeepers to Ukraine last year, the idea was rejected by other allies. But it has gained momentum in recent months, especially before Mr. Trump's inauguration. On the other hand, the United Kingdom is open to handing over Typhoons to the Ukrainian Air Force, but this would require a long-term plan, including pilot training, logistical infrastructure, and parts procurement. If the United Kingdom gives the green light, we are capable of adapting our pilots in a short time, Kyiv said. Having Typhoon jets flying over Ukraine could provide a much more effective defense and perhaps offensive capability against Russian air forces. Of course, there is also the risk of a major escalation between NATO and Russia. However, the United Kingdom seems to be closer to saying, let us give Typhoons if necessary, or at least start a pilot training process, rather than taking a hesitant stance as in the should we give F-35s or not debates coming from the United States. Russia, on the other hand, characterizes Britain's moves as aggression. According to statements from Moscow, the Kremlin considers London's allocation of frozen Russian assets to Ukraine a clear violation of international law. Likewise, talk of the possibility of the United Kingdom sending troops to Ukraine has led the Russian press to comment that London is playing with fire. Although London has not officially confirmed an all-out deployment of troops to Ukraine, it appears to be determined to deploy trainers, advisors, and special operations units. This would not mean a direct war with Russia, but we would de facto support Ukraine's defense capability, Starmer's government says. The United Kingdom is also trying to take the initiative on the diplomatic front by hosting a leaders' summit on Ukraine. The summit rounds off a busy week of diplomacy for the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is increasing United Kingdom defense spending and has traveled to Washington, D.C., for productive talks with President Trump to support United Kingdom and European security. The Prime Minister met again with both President Trump and President Zelensky following the events at the President's meeting in Washington, D.C. This morning, the Prime Minister welcomed Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni to Downing Street and then appeared at the summit in central London. The leaders of Denmark, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Spain, Finland, Sweden, the Czech Republic, and Romania are also attending the summit. It is also known that the Turkish foreign minister will be present at the summit. The British Prime Minister has also invited the Secretary-General of NATO, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and European Council President Antonio Costa. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will meet the leaders later in the summit. This summit of European leaders is of great importance for peace in Ukraine. European leaders are set to prioritize military support and increased economic pressure on Russia to strengthen Ukraine's position. Talks will also focus on securing a lasting peace deal, ensuring Ukraine can deter future Russian aggression, and planning for robust security guarantees. So, Keir Starmer announced that he will present a peace plan to United States President Donald Trump after a summit of European leaders in London. Starmer said that his recent meetings with Zelensky, France's Macron, and Trump had led to an agreement that the United Kingdom would work with Paris and possibly one or two other countries to work with Kyiv to draw up a plan to stop the fighting. The British Prime Minister added that the plan would then be discussed with the United States. Concrete declarations of support at the London summit are keeping all eyes on the situation. United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer was very clear, the whole of the United Kingdom stands with Ukraine. Many other European leaders have also pledged their support for the Ukrainian people. But the meeting in London later today will be a critical time because they need to make concrete steps, plans, and announcements on how they will support Ukraine. This is no longer the case. Europe really needs to act, at least that is the feeling in Ukraine. But does it still make sense to refuse to choose between Washington, Europe, and Kiev when the United States, the guarantor of the Western security apparatus for 80 years, now looks like an unreliable partner? British pundits and political leaders, including the most Atlanticist ones, are increasingly convinced that the Western camp is falling apart. Gordon Brown's Foreign Secretary said that the idea of the West is not dead, but in its current form, it is in intensive care. Peter Ricketts, David Cameron's former national security advisor, says Starmer should give up his ambition to be a bridge to the United States. He thinks it is an old British mentality, but he does not think it is helpful. The challenge facing the West is daunting, but the alliance has endured strong doubts before. And there are strong arguments on both sides of the Atlantic that could save the alliance and support a strong United States presence and engagement in Europe. And Europe itself can do a lot to show why the United States is much stronger than it would be without it. In the early 1990s, there were voices advocating the gradual disintegration of NATO after the end of the Warsaw Pact. But since Russia has been on the path of revisionism for the last 2 decades, NATO has not only survived, it has continued to grow, and it has become stronger in terms of cohesion, membership, and deterrent power. The Trump administration has created a fundamental trust issue. For the first time, European leaders are unsure whether the United States remains committed to NATO and to the American leadership role in NATO. But the story is more complex. It is crucial to remember that Trump played a vital role in Ukraine's defense. Ukraine was able to fend off a full-scale Russian invasion in February 2022 and survive because the United States had begun supplying Ukraine with lethal weapons, like Javelin anti-tank missiles, during Trump's first term. Without the Javelins, Russian forces would have been able to capture Kiev in a matter of days, as originally planned. It is therefore not too far-fetched to argue that Ukraine owes a significant part of its survival in the critical days of early spring 2022 to the support of the former Trump White House. Why would Washington now want to abandon this remarkable success story, a story of United States-Ukrainian determination and resolve to defend and promote the sovereign rights of a free country? The United States also understands the dangers of abandoning Europe to deal with Russia. After Russia's annexation of Crimea and occupation of eastern Ukraine in 2014, Washington decided to leave the confrontation with Moscow largely to the Europeans. The main instruments for this were the so-called Minsk process, the talks aimed at a solution for eastern Ukraine, and the Normandy Four, the contact group of France, Germany, Russia, and Ukraine that met between 2014 and 2022. Unfortunately, the Minsk and Normandy process failed, and an American leadership vacuum encouraged the Russian side to escalate further, culminating in the invasion in February 2022. Neither the first Trump administration nor the Biden administration repeated the mistake made by the Obama White House in 2014. They did not leave the resolution of the Ukrainian war to the Europeans, but instead decided to lead a remarkable international effort to support Ukraine. The new Trump administration has decided to play a leading role again, this time to end the war after 11 years of conflict and annexation and 3 years of brutal full-scale occupation. In principle, it is in Europe's own interest to welcome this strategic United States engagement, which in fact stands in the way of a larger Washington shift away from Europe and toward China. But to succeed, the two sides of the Atlantic must quickly bridge the trust gap. If this can be done, the critical challenge is then to find a way to secure and implement a viable Ukrainian agreement. Above all, Ukraine will need to participate and make sure that the outcome is fair and not a sellout. Without the active involvement of Ukraine and Europe, the Trump administration's peace effort could fizzle out before it has even begun in earnest. It is therefore in the United States' interest to quickly make peace with Zelensky and the Ukrainian leadership after the White House confrontation on February 28. Is the United States still Europe's power? Behind the tensions between Washington and Kiev lies Europe's role in the security equation. The United States military presence in Europe has strengthened in recent years, but it is far from equal to the hundreds of thousands of Russian troops in Ukraine and in Russia's western military districts. And Washington has firmly rejected United States boots on the ground in Ukraine. That is why the Trump administration needs European partners, and it has made this clear by asking European powers to secure or enforce a possible Ukraine deal. In return, the Europeans must be determined enough to confront Washington with its own requirements. Adapting the American Revolutionary War slogan, "No taxation without representation," they should make it clear that there will be no military deployment without participation in peace talks. And Europe knows one thing: the deal, if it happens, is not just about dividing Ukraine or securing a quick ceasefire. It is about a lasting and secure peace arrangement, about existential security challenges for all of Europe. An even bigger question is how to deal with Russia. So far, there have been no meaningful signals from Moscow about possible concessions. Predictably, the Kremlin has made maximalist demands and will find it very difficult to make concessions. It is an illusion to believe that a lasting peace with Russia will break out only by sanctifying the line of contact in eastern Ukraine. Russia will come up with new, complex, and far-reaching demands with strategic stability issues in relation to United States military installations in Eastern Europe, making it an expensive and unreliable partner. Europe and the United States should prepare themselves for a long and painful process. Above all, there is an urgent need for a new kind of European leadership. To defend strategic security interests and rebuild the frayed alliance, European powers must show that they can shoulder a more significant burden that increases the alliance's collective strength. France, Germany, Poland, and other like-minded neighbors should launch a major defense initiative centered around a core group of powers ready to speak with one voice on security issues. This European Defense Union would agree on majority decision-making with as close participation as possible from the United Kingdom. Key objectives would include the creation of a consolidated and unified defense market and supply chain, joint development, procurement, and maintenance of military equipment, and joint training of military personnel. As nuclear powers, France and the United Kingdom will be encouraged to examine options for increasing the EDU contribution to extended deterrence. The best and most elegant way for the Trump administration to engage both Europe and Ukraine in the peace agreement would be to re-establish the tried and true contact group format introduced under United States leadership in the 1990s to create unity and a sense of common purpose. We can remind Washington that it should be proud of this innovative and successful diplomatic format. It is a United States invention. In Ukraine, it can provide the critical ingredients needed to ensure that the war actually ends. 30 years ago, diplomat Richard Holbrooke wrote an article entitled "America, a European Power." Holbrooke predicted that Europe in the 21st century will still need the active American engagement that has been a necessary component of continental balance for half a century. The article ends with a prophetic assertion: the task ahead is as daunting as it is necessary. To walk away from this challenge will only mean paying a higher price later on. Yes, Europe needs the United States to permanently end the war in Ukraine, but the United States will need Europe to successfully accomplish this task. We hope the Trump White House recognizes this reality. Thank you for following us. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe.